It's called Backroads France.
Yeah, touring Backroads France. Yeah.
Backroads France.
So you're going to be on the video. This is a French silver coin with the face of Charlemagne. Welcome to Touring Backroads France. Today we're taking a bike tour of a town in the Deux-Sèvres department of France called Melle, M-E-L-L-E. Now what's special about this town is that it's known for a silver mine from the time of Charlemagne, a silver mine that was active for 400 years and provided a lot of the coinage that was used in Europe through the time of the Frankish kings up until the 11th century. This was the largest silver mine in Europe for hundreds of years, and you can still find traces of it today in ancient coinage from the early Middle Ages. This provided the monetary basis for the Carolingian dynasty, Charlemagne and his descendants over hundreds of years. Tunnels from this mining operation continue for dozens of kilometers under this very town. Now this town was built along a river valley, which was particular because it had cliffs with rock outcroppings that allowed a very particular form of rock to be visible, a rock that contained silver. But what's great about this town is that not only is it a backroads location, but it's very, very accessible. Highly enjoyable to bike around. There's a ring greenway called the Chemin de la Découverte. Come with me today as we visit the city of Melle. We bike around and see what the different places are to visit and learn a little bit more about its history.
Taking a tour around this town of just 6,000 inhabitants today, we'll discover 3 beautifully preserved Romanesque churches, 2 spectacular wash houses, and many stunning buildings dating from different centuries. Located between the larger cities of Poitiers, La Rochelle, Niort, and Angoulême, it sits on the southern border of the Deux-Sèvres department. The town is no longer served by rail, but lies at the intersection of 2 major local roads, the D948 and the D950. Spanning over 1,000 years, the history of the town can be divided into 2 essential categories, the Middle Ages and the Industrial Revolution. For today's trivia question, there is a table everyone should go revisit periodically. What is silver's atomic number? And if you know that answer, what does it represent? We'll do a quick science review at the end of the video, and you may be surprised at what you learn. Human presence in Melle goes back to antiquity, but the town attained major prominence in the early Middle Ages with the discovery of minerals, including galena, a lead ore that contains trace amounts of silver. Early smelting techniques allowed this ore to be made into medieval coinage. During the reign of Dagobert I, a Frankish king in the early 7th century, whose effigy we can observe on this gold coin, up to 8,000 pounds of silver coinage was sent to Paris every year. This is the equivalent to around 3 metric tons today. The long and laborious extraction of galena from the miles of underground galleries in Melle was a centuries-long endeavor, leading to important political and economic changes throughout Western Europe. At the silver mine of the Frankish kings, located just downhill from the vibrant town center, a guided visit by our knowledgeable hosts Jeff and former mine guide Jean-Paul allow us to discover so much more about this incredible site and these fascinating times of the Carolingian dynasty.
On a un problème à la fin du 7e siècle. On a besoin de monnaie, mais on n'a plus d'or. Donc on commence à y mettre des monnaies en argent.
The mines here in Mel were extracted from the early 7th century to the end of the 10th century. Yeah. So the ore itself we find in a very particular type of limestone, full of what's called silica, which makes it extremely hard. It's actually so hard it's impossible to break with iron tools. You could hit away as long as you want with a sledgehammer or a pick, it won't do a thing. The only way, back in this early part of the Middle Ages, to extract this type of limestone is using fire, what's called a fire setting technique, where you're going to pile logs against the rock itself, heat it up to roughly between 400 and 500 degrees, and that then creates a thermal shock. The rock bursts, and it'll fragilize about 10 centimeters of the rock behind it. And after that's done, the miner just comes along with a hammer, and he'll break away what's been fragilized. And once he hits the hard limestone again, he has to repeat the operation. So by doing this, they're probably going to be able to dig only 15 centimeters at a time the rock. And what's really impressive here in Mel is actually over the 400 years, digging 15 centimeters at a time, they succeed in digging over 30 kilometers of underground galleries, making this, in that period in history, not just the biggest mine in Francia, but in the whole of Occidental Europe at the time. It goes back probably to the Neolithic, you know, when they're going to make a fire, often they put stones around it, and the stones that burst, of course, that's the invention of this type of work. And the same with the invention of metals, you know, that's how they're going to discover copper and then lead and all that sort of thing, by the ores mixed in with the rocks.
Charlemagne est un personnage qui va comprendre l'importance de l'économie. Donc, ce qu'il veut, c'est que la monnaie circule. Donc, il met en place des ateliers monétaires et une réforme monétaire. À partir de 781, on a une réforme très particulière et il décide que donc la monnaie sera d'argent avec un système tout simple. D'un côté, on a le nom de l'empereur, enfin, le roi, puisqu'il n'est pas encore empereur, hein, Carolus, en 2 lignes, et au revers, le nom d'atelier.
You have a really good example here of what's in French an abattage au feu. So it's the logs piled against the rock face itself. So it's by lighting this type of logs that you're going to create the thermal shock, and the rock's going to burst. Of course, what's going to happen here is because heat radiates, it'll always force the rock to burst and break up into round and oval shapes, like you have here. And these shapes, you find them throughout the 30 kilometers of underground galleries. Originally, the miners would have worked in appalling conditions. What they want in this mine, of course, is the galena, the silver-bearing ore that contains the silver. So galena itself is actually mostly lead. It's 80% lead. We have other impurities like iron, zinc, very low traces of other impurities, and a very small amount of silver. The actual amount of silver is less than 1%, between 1 and 3 per thousand of silver alone in galena. So, I mean, you soon realise we need a huge amount of ore just to produce a small amount of silver. That means that the miners themselves, all they're interested in is the ore. So all of this sterile rock, the rock that doesn't contain the ore itself, they have absolutely no use for it. And to actually extract that stuff from the mine, over 30 kilometres of underground galleries, is a huge undertaking, and actually not needed at all. What they're going to end up doing is work from one room to the other. Okay. So let's say this would be the first room that they're going to dig. Well, they'll completely empty all of the sterile rock and the rubble outside, because you've got no choice, you can't put it anywhere else. Once you dig your second room, all of the rubble from the second room you pile in the first room, the third one in the second one, and so on and so on. What you've got to then leave is a small passageway to leave the mines and come into the mines, but that passageway is going to be absolutely tiny, talking width of 1 man and roughly 80 centimeters high.
Got it.
So they would have been on all fours crawling through these
Yeah.
very small passageways.
Yeah. Any idea about how many miners would be working in a given area?
Very difficult to say today, because today, sadly, no surviving documents are known to exist relating to the miners themselves. So we don't know how many people would have worked here at one given time. We don't even know if they were paid or if they were prisoners or what. We have no information whatsoever that has survived history. I mean, just on the figures alone, so you've got 400 years of ore extraction here, and then you're going to dig the rock 15 centimeters at a time just to do that, to end up with 30 kilometers of galleries. A lot of people would have worked here back then. You're talking, for that period in history, on an industrial scale, it would have been.
L'or, en fait, elle sert à cette époque-là pour la religion. C'est-à-dire qu'effectivement, on va voir l'or arriver dans tout ce qui est la religion chrétienne. De plus en plus, l'or apparaît dans les... que ce soit dans les objets de culte. Charlemagne va, à partir de 793-794, donner une notion très précise. Il décide qu'il faut 240 deniers à la livre. Ce qui fait que le poids du denier est d'1,60 g en moyenne. Si vous achetez le cuivre qui est obligatoire pour réduire le métal, vous avez des monnaies d'excellente qualité.
France is the perfect example of that. The common word for their money in this country is argent,
Right.
silver. And that's only because of a mine like this one that produced silver for coinage over centuries. And it's basically just over centuries like that, continuously using silver for coins, it became the word for their currency.
Right.
And even today, I mean, we spend euros like I don't know what, and we call it argent. Well, it's not silver. In the 19th century, by quarrying, they rediscovered parts of the mine, and that's why we have the entrances here today.
Got it.
Because other than that, no other entrance is known from the period.
Right. Nonetheless, the mines extend out quite a bit
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, they do.
That's interesting to know.
All the chimneys are long plugged up. You know, they did it at the end of the 10th century, actually. They fill it up with rubble, probably for the simple reason that life went on the surface. Doesn't stop water from pouring through today, and that's what we have in front of us now is what's left of one of these chimneys from inside the mine, and you can clearly see here where the chimney starts. It's now completely filled in, and you have, of course, calcium deposit in huge quantities surrounding it. Small stalactites just starting to form, and of course, with the rain that we've had in these past few weeks, it's dripping away, as you can see. Do you want to finish with a few fossils?
Sure.
Like that? Because,
Yeah.
of course, being a fossilized seabed from roughly 250 million years ago, we're going to get a few critters, as you'd say in America.
Yeah, yeah.
So here you have half of a Coquille Saint-Jacques to start off with, which is a prominent symbol in this part of the world.
Yeah, indeed.
And you have belemnites. All these little things are belemnites.
So this is going back hundreds of millions, maybe?
To at least 250 million years ago to 300 million years ago is a really good example of a belemnite there. So these would have all been prehistoric crustaceans living in the sea. And just their imprint is left now in the limestone.
As an added bonus.
Yeah, I'm afraid no fossilized T-Rexes though.
Yeah, you have to go a bit further down the road for
Exactly,
that. But there
yeah,
are
yeah.
a few.
Yeah.
Galena is present in natural cavities in the limestone known as geodes, created by the infiltration of water and often containing quartz crystals combined with silver ore. The mining operations here ceased before the 11th century, after which the miles of underground tunnels were abandoned and forgotten. As nature reclaimed the site, natural calcium deposits formed, and hibernating animals such as bats made use of the caverns. It was only through stone quarrying and the industrial era that the tunnels were rediscovered, creating the entrances to today's mine visit, which only comprises about 350 meters of the many kilometers of tunnels. At the time of the active mines here, workers accessed the tunnels through natural openings created by erosion. Today, these entrances still remain on private lands. The Normans pillaged the town in the year 848, but silver continued to be produced for at least another century. Just before the turn of the first millennium, the mint was moved to nearby towns such as Niort, Poitiers, and Saint-Jean-d'Angely. This could have been due to political changes, but there is speculation that an earthquake may have damaged or shifted some of the ore veins in the tunnels, as this region of France is prone to seismic activity. Many other vestiges from the Middle Ages remain, including the 3 Romanesque churches. The Église Saint-Hilaire is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and remains an active church today, sitting on the opposite side of the small Béronne River from the current Silver Mine Museum. However, the geology here was similar, with hillside erosion exposing rock outcroppings and cliffs allowing the church to be built into the hillside. Its current form dates from the 12th century, replacing an earlier wooden structure. The bishops here can be traced back to the 4th century and the origins of Christianity after the decline of paganism and the Roman Empire. The nearly perfect east-west alignment of the church allows beautiful beams of light to flow through the southern windows, giving exceptional luminosity to this inspiring edifice. The exterior has many features, both large and small, with astounding attention to detail. A statue of Constantine I sits above the north portal, which might symbolize his victory over the pagans. A filled-in doorway on this wall dates from the Roman times and still features some pagan symbols. This would make sense, given that so many churches were constructed on former pagan sites over the centuries of transition to Christianity in Europe. The architecture of the church is unusual, in that the interior columns are used to support the weight of the structure, giving the outside a much more gracious look and allowing for exterior decorations to become a very outstanding feature. Inside the church, over 280 carvings of different musicians, creatures, and monsters are visible. As a touch of modernity, the current altar was installed in 2011 and created by the French designer Mathieu Lehanneur, made from white Namibian marble. The site finds its place along the routes of Santiago de Compostela in France, welcoming Christian pilgrims along the westernmost route from Paris. Two other Romanesque churches find their place in Melle, but since the time of the French Revolution, these properties have remained under state control. Today they are used primarily for modern art and to exhibit artifacts from the town's history, including these high-quality 8th and 9th century engravings from Carolingian assayers, whom the king commanded to ascertain the purity of the coinage from Melle. These are located in the Église Saint-Pierre. The church dates from the 12th century as well, was named a historical monument in 1862 and restored more recently in the 20th century. It has a much simpler architectural structure than Saint-Hilaire and is the site of a cemetery dating back to the time of the Carolingian dynasty. The Saint-Savinien church sits on the high point of the medieval town, predating the other two sites. While being the least remarkable of the three Romanesque structures, it does have some interesting features. The interior ceiling resembles the interior of a capsized ship, with original carpentry. Several notable magistrates from the 16th and 17th centuries find their tombs here. The church was used as a prison following the French Revolution and up until 1927. Meanwhile, in 1914, it became a historical monument, and is now used for much more enjoyable occasions such as music festivals and art exhibits. A number of the other interesting buildings and structures are located throughout the town center. Many of these are located along the route of the Discovery Walk, including remains of the medieval ramparts. These have almost a storybook-like quality to them, similar to the two washhouses. The old stone walls, built in many places around the town, have a particularity as well, featuring triangular-shaped capstones. The Hôtel de Ménoc in the town center is an ornate Gothic building from the 15th century, used primarily as a courthouse in times past, and today for community projects. The religious conflicts that divided France following the Edict of Nantes in the 16th and 17th centuries did not spare this town, as it became a Protestant enclave resisting persecution from the French monarchy loyal to the Pope, later participating heavily in the French Revolution and the Vendée campaign. Several of its citizens became prominent military figures of the First French Republic, and these traditions of Protestantism and republicanism are still very apparent in the town today. After the French Revolution, two major shifts occurred in Melle, as throughout most of France and Europe. The invention of the steam engine allowed the development of the railways and factories. Enter Jean-François Cailles, a key figure of French industrialization. Born in 1804, Cailles came from the nearby town of Chef-Boutonne. From the humblest of beginnings, he built an empire of industry through the development of steam engines and sugar refining, starting with his first company in 1836. In 1848, Cailles obtained license for the patents of Thomas Russell Crampton and began manufacturing Crampton locomotives as well. He was one of the first railway constructors in France. With over 100 of these built in France, the rear driving axle configuration of this model engine provided a low center of gravity, allowing it to reach higher speeds of up to 75 miles an hour. The arrival of fast passenger service encouraged the building of main lines throughout France, reaching Ruffec in 1853 and Niort in 1856 through the Paris and Orléans Company. Melle, being between these 2 points, became the central stop along a secondary line completed in 1885. In the meantime, Jean-François Cailles had opened a sugar beet distillery in Melle, along with building a large manor in a village next to Ruffec, in order to be near the mainline trains to Paris. Jean-François Cailles left an indelible mark on 19th century France, with a street named after him in Paris, his Parisian home currently being used as the town hall of the 8th arrondissement, and having his name being one of 72 engraved on the Eiffel Tower by Gustave Eiffel, owing to his contributions to its construction. After his death in 1871, he was buried in Père-Lachaise Cemetery. The sugar distillery in Melle was accessed by a spur track over the Béarn River, which today forms a portion of the path around the town. With the development of better roads and transportation, both passenger and freight service declined throughout the 20th century, leading to progressive abandonment of this secondary line. Passenger service to Melle ended permanently in 1954, and freight service was halted after 1977. The tracks were removed, and parts of the line are usable today as a bike path or a greenway. At the start of the First World War, the distillery was transformed to support the war effort, becoming a chemical factory and leading to the transformation of the site into a modern petrochemicals plant. In today's world, Melle is a vibrant town with an assorted variety of events and exhibits throughout the year, incorporating many modern art pieces into its landscape, some of which have become permanent additions. The town hosts a yearly art festival in the summer months. Music events and a Friday farmers market are regular events as well.
What's great about this town is that there are a lot of bike paths and different ways that you can visit. On foot is fine, everything is within walkable distance of the city center, but there's also a bike path that goes around the town called Le Chemin de la Découverte. It's about 6 kilometers around, and you can actually go and visit a lot of the different arboretums and gardens and parks that are located in the periphery around the city on this greenway. Now this is attached to a greenway that's a longer distance ride for bikers, which is the former rail line that joined Niort and Ruffec in Charente. This rail line was abandoned many years ago, and parts of it are now cyclable as a greenway.
I stopped in to talk to some of the local artisans and shopkeepers.
J'ai démarré l'épicerie fermière il y a 16 ans. C'était au début, c'était balbutiement des produits locaux. Donc on m'a regardé avec des grands yeux en disant faire un magasin de ce type-là à Mel, c'était un peu un challenge qui s'avère plutôt positif. On a fait 10 ans sur une petite structure. Depuis 6 ans, on a agrandi le magasin. On travaille avec 90 producteurs régulièrement. Et donc ça occupe. Et après, on a des grossistes pour les compléments de gamme. L'idée, c'est de présenter tout alimentaire, aussi bien du fruit et légumes que du frais, que de l'épicerie, que des boissons alcoolisées, des boissons sans alcool. Et donc là, le torréfacteur dont on vient de parler, c'est la cerise sur le gâteau qui date depuis 6 ans. Ça, c'est un torréfacteur qui a 20 ans d'âge déjà,
Ok.
et qui est reparti pour 20 ans. C'est une marque française. Et l'idée, c'était de pouvoir apporter de la torréfaction à l'épicerie. C'est un produit, le café, qui n'est pas local, mais le fait de le torréfier sur place, ça donne un côté plus de proximité. Après, pour revenir sur la ville de Mel, je vous disais, Mel, c'est le village gaulois. Je veux dire, cette activité, elle s'y prête parce que les clients, les consommateurs sont plutôt sur du circuit court, de la production locale, de la production bio. Et on a une vraie dynamique à Mel locale. La ville est peut-être pas très grande, mais on a une centaine d'associations, une centaine d'artisans et de commerçants.
Et j'ai entendu parler d'un fromage à Mel.
Alors,
est-ce que vous pouvez en dire quelques mots, le fromage de chèvre?
Alors, fromage de chèvre en Poitou-Charentes, on va dire, dans le Mélois.
Déjà bien
Et on a
loti.
surtout la fromagerie des Gores qui est à Mel et qui fait donc un motet sur feuille qui sera bientôt l'AOP quand techniquement et administrativement ça passera. Et on a le motet sur le motet donc local, et on a le chabichou du Poitou qui est aussi un produit l'AOP du coin. Et après le lycée agricole qui a une filière bio et qui vient de remonter une fromagerie. Donc la foisse de la Motte Saint-Péret, ce produit-là, est donc produit à la Motte par un paysan boulanger, Emmanuel Baptiste. Et c'est un produit qui date du temps de Rabelais. Et il y a un titre honorifique de maître foissier, avec une recette secrète, dont même nous ne connaissons pas la teneur. Et depuis cet été, donc, j'ai pu intégrer la confrérie de la foisse. Ils m'ont remercié pour le partenariat que l'on a et la mise en avant que l'on peut faire sur la ville de Mel. C'est vraiment un produit entre la brioche et la gâche, peu sucré et qui est très sympathique.
It's as you prefer. It's my first language. No? French. Okay.
J'ai créé une boutique de prêt-à-porter à Mel qui s'appelle Amel Il Boutique. Elle pour représenter les femmes, Il pour représenter les hommes. J'ai fait un choix de vêtements plutôt français, équitables, de petites productions, dans un petit village qui est fort sympathique avec beaucoup de culture, beaucoup d'histoire, comme je pourrais le voir dans le reportage, et tout un petit univers un peu comme si on vivait dans le petit domaine d'Astérix et Obélix. Comme les Gaulois, ils sont un peu centrés dans leur petite ville, donc ils font beaucoup participer le commerce local.
Moi, je suis Jean-Baptiste Pellissier, on m'appelle JB, je suis plus connu comme JB ici. Et je coordonne la plupart des événements, je fais de la régie en fait dans le spectacle, régie générale. Et donc je coordonne la plupart des événements qui se passent, notamment pour la Ronde des Jurons, qui est une des associations de programmatrices au café et sur Mel, principalement de chansons et de musique française, mais ça c'est vaste et ça peut aller plus loin aussi. Et voilà, pour le Café du Boulevard aussi, coordonner un petit peu les événements, les concerts avec les différentes associations, gérer la communication. Et donc concrètement, moi je suis entre les artistes, les techniciens, les bénévoles. Ici à Mel, là, il y a quasiment aucun break. On a une saison, alors nous avec la Ronde des Jurons, on a une saison de octobre à juin qu'on appelle la saison sur les planches, donc avec des concerts au café et au Métulum, la salle polyvalente qui servent de cinéma et de salle de spectacle. Et on a des événements, après tout l'été, on a une saison qu'on appelle Sur la route, avec des concerts devant le café sur la route, comme le nom l'indique. On a un festival en février qui s'appelle Les Givrés, avec une programmation un peu plus décalée, un peu plus rock, rap, rock, électro. Et donc ça, c'est pour ce qui est de la Ronde des Jurons. Après, il y a les Aramboules qui fait des concerts de jazz toute l'année, qui a un gros festival en été aussi, un festival gratuit de jazz en juillet, qui s'appelle le Boulevard du Jazz. Il y a une association qui s'appelle le Plancher des Valses, qui fait de la musique trad aussi, qui organise des événements tout au long de l'année. Puis après, on a des collectifs rock, rap, Euphonique Bazar en électro, les soirées rap avec Emiliano. Voilà, en fait, c'est beaucoup de groupes comme ça, d'associations, qui fait l'identité et le charme et le succès du Café du Boulevard. C'est que c'est vraiment le QG de toutes ces associations, de tous ces groupes, et que c'est ouvert à tout, quoi. Donc,
In addition to the local businesses, there is the tourist office in the town center, which I highly recommend visiting first, as they will gladly provide you information about sites and events in the town, both in French and English. The office is located in a 19th century building with a beautiful Art Nouveau doorway. As I was stopping in, I met some local artists practicing their drawing techniques here. I wanted to stop in and talk to them about their sketchy behavior.
Je m'appelle Michel André, on m'appelle Croque-Tout, et je dessine, je suis illustrateur. Je dessine beaucoup dans les villes, ici en Poitou-Charentes, mais partout dans le monde, quand je voyage. Et puis je fais aussi beaucoup de mécanique, mais de mécanique ancienne, des autos, des voitures.
The answer to today's trivia question is 47. Silver's atomic number represents the number of protons in each atom's nucleus. Now, there's a lot more to say about silver, whether as an element, an industrial metal, or a monetary asset. That subject alone could fill hours of documentary time, but what is interesting to note is that silver finds its place in the periodic table in alignment with copper and gold. This family of elements, with atomic numbers 29, 47, and 79, are also, very interestingly, prime numbers. You may also recognize that since antiquity, these metals make up the base of coinage, as well as the order of Olympic medals since the first games in ancient Greece. One has to wonder how ancient civilizations instinctively realized these atomic triads before the development of chemistry or modern science, since the periodic table has only been standardized for less than 2 centuries. A town such as Mel provides a startling reminder about the value of hard currency throughout history, its place in the rise and fall of empires, the development of economies, the debasement of currencies, and the revolutionary changes that overtake society when nature's laws are not respected. I hope you've enjoyed this short documentary about Mel, a fascinating backroads location in France. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated.